Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. We've got a very special bye-week episode this week, live from Boardman, Ohio, and I've got not one, but two Davids with me here this week. Zane Bloom joined by David DeSantis II and David DeSantis III. We finally got David's dad on here for an episode of Boardman Black and Gold. It's been a long time coming, but he has a lot of very strong opinions on the Pittsburgh Steelers, has had plenty of strong opinions over the years. We've kind of heard them through David, but now we're going to get to hear it straight from the source. So, hey, why don't we just get this introduction, get it out of the way? Who are you? And, why should we care about your Steelers opinions?
Yeah, so I'm the original Dave DeSantis. The one that you know is my son, Trey. I can start off by apologizing that some of my bad attitude and temper towards Mike Tomlin and our Steelers has rubbed off on him from me. He was always very optimistic and very, looking for the glass to be half full. But maybe I won't take credit for that. Maybe we'll blame it on Mike Tomlin for the way that he's treated the beloved franchise that we've grown up loving and following.
All right. Yeah. So, David,
awesome.
You've taken a lot of it from your dad, I guess, which is interesting. Yeah. So, are you the two of you? Would you say that you're more naturally negative, and you say that it's kind of rubbed off on him?
So I would say I made a conscious decision when I married my wife 29 years ago that I was going to become more optimistic. And so in life, I have chosen to be more optimistic. And I used to be that way almost blindly about the Steelers. I had faith in their draft process. I had faith in the way they handled their contracts, no discussions during the season. And I think what has happened is over the last decade, what I have seen is the way that Mike Tomlin has become more and more involved in that. I've lost a lot of faith in that, and I've continued to spiral downward towards the negative zone when it comes to the Steelers. I have two college buddies that were in a group text together. And so this is going, this is 30 plus years ago. We went to school together, right? And the one, he entered the zone of negativity probably closer to 15 years ago. And I refused, the other two of us refused to go there. And I think we've slowly become more in tune with the fact that his assessment of, once again, the draft process, how we manage coordinators, how we call plays, our scheme, and all this has finally come to roost, and we've kind of come around a little bit. But that was until last week. So you guys have caught me at a good time.
What's interesting, too, because we wanted to do this one as a kind of state of the Steelers. We have like an early bye week this year. It's week 5. We have an early bye, so there's really not a lot that we can talk about as far as, the season overall goes. But just as the state of the Steelers right now, I think David and I, we have some pretty founded opinions, at least right now. But, what do you think as far as where we are as a team right now? Where do you think we are?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think that the biggest thing for me is that the record does not resemble the team in the slightest. I think that, you think 3-1, and you're like, that's the great first month. That's if you go 3-1 each month, you're totally fine. But I think that the execution and performance on the field does not resemble a team that is, a confident 3-1. And so I think that there are a lot of things that need to be worked on. Like even, last week, the beginning of last week or 2 weeks ago, you're thinking like, oh, this is going to be a great week to talk about. And then, the fourth quarter happens. So I think that there's just things in each game that just are red flags that last year when we got to the nitty gritty of our schedule, we collapsed. It's like these red flags are things that I'm like, that could easily happen again, which is unfortunate to say.
Well, right now it seems like the problems keep compounding and they don't seem to be improving. We did see a little bit of improvement last week against the Vikings because sure, they were winning for the entirety of the game. And then they regressed back to the mean in the final 10 minutes.
Right.
And it's like, again, I don't feel like I'm happy with this win. Wins should be happy, right?
Yeah.
You would think.
It literally, Trey got up off the couch and he said, wow, how can your team win and you still feel so bad about your team coming out of it?
Well, yeah, and it's like and especially with that game, because the other games, it was close the whole time. But that game, 3 quarters, you're thinking you're, sky high. And then that last quarter happens and you're just like, I feel even worse than I did, going into this game. So I think that, it'll be interesting to look at the rest of the schedule, see what's happened specifically, the rest of our AFC North games. Those games have changed a ton. The Ravens, maybe not so much, but Browns and Bengals, I feel like there's a lot of fluctuation there that could heavily go in our favor.
Well, so that's probably a good place to start. It might even not even be actually talking about the Steelers, but the state of where we are in the division right now, because like you just said, the AFC North is ours to take right now. The Bengals are not the Bengals without Joe Burrow. For whatever reason, the Ravens are underachieving against good teams, sure, but Lamar seems like he might be out for a couple of weeks. Derrick Henry is not the Derrick Henry that we know, and the Browns is the Browns. And, the AFC North should be the Steelers' division this year. And you talked about that a little bit before we got started. Why don't you dive into that? Yeah,
so I think that the way that I've kind of existed now going on 8+ years is we just have no chance of winning a Super Bowl. We maybe scrape our way into the playoffs to get our teeth kicked in. And the question is really, what's the goal? So I had an epiphany last week listening to sports talk radio, going into the game in Ireland, and realizing that if we don't win the division, the Cravens will have won it 3 years in a row, which is unacceptable. Unacceptable.
And I think you said that's never happened.
Right? Never, no. And so, all of a sudden, what's one of the things that impacts rivalries when you no longer have an even back and forth, but one team dominates for a long period of time? That impacts the significance of a rivalry. So I thought, you know what? I think I can get behind this. Let's just focus on us winning the divisions and preventing them from winning. Yeah, we'll get a playoff game. Odds are we're not going to win, but at least we'll win the division. And looking at the schedule ahead, especially with injuries, Joe Burrow, now Lamar Jackson, we've got a prime opportunity. And I mean, Cleveland, they're changing out quarterbacks. Cleveland, the clowns be clowns. We know that.
That's right.
Yeah, especially with, I don't really know how Dylan Gabriel will play, but I mean, they've liked him, obviously, because they put him in a couple of times, and Joe Flacco's completely done nothing. But yeah, I think the Ravens I think the most important part about the division is because, Lamar Jackson's out 2 to 3 weeks. I don't know who they play, but I mean, I don't know. Like this offense, ever since he stepped into the league, has been designed for Lamar Jackson. I don't know how Cooper Rush can run that offense, especially if you got Derrick Henry underperforming, so your run game's not going to be as successful. It would be nice to see them drop. I think Lamar might be out 3 weeks.
I saw 2 to 3.
Okay, so hopefully there's 2 losses in those just to give us another advantage. And I think that, like what he said, the Browns are the Browns. I'm not worried about them. And Cincinnati, even though the one year that Joe Burrow got hurt, Jake Browning filled in really well, and they, I think, maybe went 9-8 or 8-9.
They were close.
They were really close, but I mean, he's been abysmal. So I don't know if they'll make a change with that anytime soon, but they're going downhill. They're all going downhill except for us right now.
And I think that, the Bengals defense, I think to begin with, was going to be really weak. So they were going to have to basically outscore teams. And I don't think he's built to do that the way Joe Burrow is. So, and their offensive line, that's why Joe keeps getting hurt, right? They haven't done enough to build that up to protect him. So they shouldn't be a factor at all. Neither should Cleveland. It's Baltimore. And yet I feel like Baltimore fans may be starting to feel like we're feeling, where Harbaugh's got an multi-year MVP, maybe a once-in-a-generation phenom at quarterback, but can't get it done. Can't get over the hump. Hasn't won a Super Bowl with them. Hasn't won the AFC like the Chiefs have year in and year out, all these different times. So I could see Baltimore fans kind of getting on that kind of bandwagon against him too.
Well, it's interesting. I literally got a text 2 days ago from one of my friends who is a Ravens fan, and he was saying, Harbaugh's got to go, because if we can't win with what we have, then there's no reason that we need to keep doing what we're doing, in a very similar sense that we feel the same way about the Steelers in a way, because it's been since 2017 where we really haven't. I mean, have we won? We've won the division since then.
Yeah.
I forget about 2020 very, very intentionally. But, really having a solid year, beginning to end since 2017. And even then they couldn't get the job done.
Right.
And, right now it seems like it's almost being handed to us on a platter. And for right now, again, we've not played a really good team yet. We've not played a good team overall, maybe the Vikings could have been that team, but they didn't have their starting quarterback and all that type of stuff. We're going to have the same type of problems that we did last year with a really tough schedule to end it out. And I think right now, it's again, if you don't win now, then you're not going to win ever. And it's like, if we don't start to make these adjustments in the problems that we have, then we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And just like a message to Ravens and Steelers fans on the Harbaugh-Tomlin comparison is that I don't really think it's a comparison, because we'll see what happens this year. If the Ravens collapse, then yeah, maybe some talks need to be going on. But if you look at like what you were saying since 2017, we've been barely getting into the playoffs when we do get into the playoffs. And then, like he said, we get absolutely destroyed. Like, these games aren't even close. There's not even like one play. But if you look at the Ravens, last year, it was a dropped catch by Mark Andrews that kept them out of the AFC Championship. The year before that, it was a Zay Flowers touchdown that ended up being a fumble out of the back of the end zone that stopped them from the Super Bowl. So they're one play away from getting to the Super Bowl. We are light years away from getting to that Super Bowl. So I think that Harbaugh, now who knows what happens this year, puts his team in a way better shape than we do, because, you know, he's competitive against those Super Bowl caliber teams, which we haven't been. Even going back to 2016, when we got to the AFC Championship, the Patriots absolutely blew us out. Like, I can't remember the last time we've been competitive against Super Bowl caliber teams.
Right. It seems like we chalk up those wins when they don't really matter. Like, remember when we opened the season with a win against the Bills, or when we broke the Patriots win streak. You know, those games, all right, they're wins, but they didn't matter because they weren't in the playoffs. They didn't help us get to the next, round of the playoffs. And I think the only thing that I'll never forget this as long as I live, as a prime example, Andy Reid in Philadelphia went to a Super Bowl and lost, went to multiple NFC championship games. But guess what? They ran him out of town. And what happened shortly after that? Philly won a Super Bowl. He's winning multiple Super Bowls in Kansas City. I think there's something to be said for that, where a message gets stale, the process doesn't work, you're not growing, you're not innovating, you're not changing with the game because you're not forced to. He was forced to change. He had to start all over. Philly, the same thing. And they both succeeded out of that. So, that's probably what's the most frustrating with me about the Steelers, is that the Rooneys are sitting there, kind of talking about how we've performed above the average, barely above the average, barely above the average. 9-8 is just above average. Even 10 wins to go get your butts kicked in the playoffs, I'd say you're still just barely above average there. So I get what you're saying, that the Ravens fans aren't quite there yet. 100%. They're closer, right? A couple of those plays and a couple of those games, they're moving on where we go back to the closest we were was if, who was the guy that dropped the interception that if he would have returned that for a pick six against the Browns?
Oh, it was Steven Nelson.
Steven Nelson. I felt like if he'd have pick six that, we'd have won that game because, it had been a one-score game at that point, and that had just been a case but we dug too deep of a hole then. I mean, that's how far back we got to go to where we're kind of like, oh, we were in it,
Right, exactly. And it's to the point where, every time that we've talked about 2 years we've done this with playoffs.
Yeah.
So our first year was the Bills year, and then last year was the Ravens year.
Yeah.
Both of those years, what happens? They get behind early, and then they can't get out of the hole that they've dug. Again, really, the last competitive game was really 2017, and even then it really wasn't that competitive.
It was a hole early that we couldn't get out of.
Yeah.
We were down 21-0 in that Jacksonville game, and we came back because our offense was insane. But again, it's like, and Mike Tomlin is known for slow starts for the season, for games. Like, he's just known for that. And like, thinking about the Chiefs and the Eagles, like making those changes, I think it has to be the collaborative leadership of the organization. Like, people will talk about the Eagles GM nonstop because he's done so amazing. And I would say that Omar Khan, since he's been the GM, has done great at bringing in talent and bringing in these skills. And unfortunately, the other sides of the leadership is failing him at the talent and weapons he's bringing in. And so we need that collaborative effort to, bring in the pieces, which we have, like the Eagles and Chiefs do, but then also have that guy that can use those pieces correctly, which we haven't had.
It's an interesting problem because I feel like if there was one person to go first, it would probably be Omar Khan.
Yeah.
Only because, though, that Mike Tomlin just has his gripping hand on the organization, and the first one to go would not be Tomlin. It would be the one that is giving Tomlin what he needs to succeed, quote unquote.
And I think that is based, on a healthy knowledge of history. How many coordinators, offensive and defensive, have taken the fall while Tomlin has remained the head coach? Multiple coordinators. Hall of Famer Dick LeBeau was forced out of town. Super Bowl winning Bruce Arians was basically told to retire, but he didn't want to quit, and then went and got another job. So there's been a long list of coordinators, and it goes back to, I think, Tomlin having too much control over the organization as a whole, and then the organization just being, I've heard this, and I haven't verified it, but we have the smallest coaching staff and the lowest paid coaching staff. So in the game Sunday, another quote that was said after one of the jailbreak, there was 2 plays where the guy literally almost untouched. As soon as Rodgers got the ball, he was getting pressure. I said, if I was the Steelers, I'd call Mike Munchak and say, name your price. Because I think we have big stud talent on the offensive line, and they're all young. If we could develop them, we could have a 5-8-year offensive line that could be at the top of the league. Back when the Cowboys were making their runs to all the Super Bowls and stuff, it starts in the trenches. But we don't coach and develop anybody, and now we're seeing them. They're okay, but they could be great possibly if we had better coaching.
Well, and this is a question I want to ask you, because we were only really alive for 3 or 4 years of Bill Cowher's coaching tenure, and we didn't really remember anything. But thinking about how it is right now with Mike Tomlin, where it's like he is an immovable object, and what he says goes with the coaching staff and all of that. What was that similar when Bill Cowher was around? Was he ever on the hot seat, or what did Steelers Nation, was he as immovable as Mike Tomlin is right now?
Absolutely not. The heat was on him like it was Andy Reid. Oh, you're getting to the AFC Championship game, but you're not winning it. Oh, you got to the Super Bowl, but you didn't win it. The heat was on him. And I think that's where the Rooneys, I felt like they used to have the right temperament. Don't pull the trigger too quick. Stay with the process, see it through, and Cowher got him a Super Bowl win, right? But I think that we've had a longer sample set now, and a long sample of not even getting to the playoffs, getting to the AFC Championship game, getting to the Super Bowl and losing. So that's where I feel as though they've changed their leadership mindset of what they think success is or not. So no, 100%. That everybody was pretty upset, and I feel like it's like Reed in Philly, like Harbaugh's getting now in Baltimore. Like, the goal is a Super Bowl. It's the Lombardi Trophy, and if it's short of that, then you're not playing to win. You're just playing to be above average.
And specifically with the Steelers organization, I get it if you're one of these younger organizations like the Panthers or the Cardinals or something like that, where it's you haven't really built up the rapport that the Steelers have built up. 6 Super Bowls. We have
the first to win 6 Super Bowls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And could be
first to 4.
Yes, exactly. And could be the first to 7. We've been talking about the stairway to 7 for 15 years now.
Yeah.
And it's here we still are.
Yep.
Think about it too. The Yankees won in 2009, and they haven't won anything since then. And the thing is, too, they are continuing to look, we've got those 27, where's 28? It's the same thing with the Steelers. Where's the 7th Super Bowl? And you've had the same coaching staff this entire time, and you haven't gotten back to it. Again, we talk about it a lot that Mike Tomlin won early, and he hasn't won since then,
It's got to be a healthy balance. Those teams that are the most winning, and then they just stop winning because they're, I guess, content or something like that. And that's something that you've got to take from Bill Belichick's book of that guy was the most winningest coach, during his entire tenure. And him and Tom Brady were never content. They always wanted to win more. And I don't that's something you can't coach, and that's something you can't teach. And if Mike Tomlin doesn't have it, he doesn't have it. I know Aaron Rodgers has it, which is something that's been beneficial this year. And TJ Watt has it, and Cam Hayward has it. Our players have it. Our players have the I want to win. TJ Watt's never won a playoff game. Aaron Rodgers, after 2 years with the Jets, people are speaking down on him, and they were speaking down on him before that because he couldn't win a playoff game or an NFC Championship game since 2010. So all the momentum's there on the player side of the field. A young GM, I'm sure the momentum's there. what's up with Mike Tomlin? Like, and this last week he showed some energy and stuff, which I will say was nice, but he hasn't shown momentum in a decade.
Well, I think right now, and again, this is kind of a state of the Steelers episode that we want to get. And we have this perspective with David's dad here. But I think what you just mentioned with Tomlin and A-Rod's energy this last week especially, I was very encouraged by that. Because again, I mean, you talk about it a lot that you just haven't seen that energy out of Tomlin. And you've kind of made me privy to that. And I haven't really noticed that until really this last week. And I was very encouraged by that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think part of that is Mike thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. He thinks that, and another part of it is that he knows his job is completely secure. He's not going anywhere until he wants to go somewhere. And what that creates is a little bit of apathy and realizing that he has players that can win games for him. Now he has another Hall of Fame quarterback that's kind of bailing him out some. When it comes down to it, coaching is what wins in this league. The players have to make plays, absolutely, but you have to set them up for the highest potential for success. It's like chess with moving pieces. Once in a while, a guy can blow up a play, but most of the time, the scheme behind that play, and that's what I love. That's part of why I love the game. I played chess as a kid, and I love that, we'll talk about this. That was the perfect offensive play call for that defense. They knew that defense was coming, or vice versa. When the defense knows, what I struggle with is that it seems like the other team always knows what we're doing on offense and defense. We rarely get away with that. But you have, once again, Rodgers, Hall of Fame quarterback, he can still throw the ball, man. His touchdown passes have been dimes. He looks sharp when he's not getting beat to pieces, which, what did I think they didn't sack him last week. Did they sack him?
Sacked him on the first play of the game.
First play, right. Yeah. And then I think the week before they had 0 sacks, but he got his butt beat. He was getting hit hard a lot of times. He's not going to survive all that. But if they could shore that up, he's going to win a lot of games on his own. And did you guys hear, somebody said that, I heard something about his helmet went out for the last drive. He couldn't hear the coaches or something like that.
Oh, I
don't know if that was a Twitter rumor or what, but I was like, oh, so he was calling his own plays? He pulled like a Big Ben where he's like, whatever, I'm going to draw it up in the sand kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I mean, and that's just such a relief to see that because there's really been no one to contest Mike Tomlin for years. Like Big Ben was the guy who was like, I'm going to, sling the ball around how I want to, especially at the end of his career. But, and that's the problem with Mike Tomlin's leadership. And I've said this, he was on the podcast with Ben. He thinks leadership's a lonely road where you're at the top by yourself. Like, no one's telling Mike Tomlin no. No one's perfect. Everyone needs to hear that they're wrong at some point. Everyone needs to hear no. Or else, again, they think they're the smartest person in the room. And there hasn't been anyone to do that. And I don't really think Ben would even do that. He would just go out and do his own thing. So I think that it's been a long time since someone has actually stood up to him and been like, no, that's dumb. Like, I'm not going to do that. And I think that, it could end up being healthy for Tomlin. I don't know. I think he might be too far gone. But I'm just thankful that Aaron Rodgers is there and someone's there to be like, just stop and let me do what I do.
So with that, let's kind of walk through the team right now. Aaron Rodgers, I think, we're fairly positive on. I think probably more positive than we were in the offseason. What were your thoughts on Rodgers in the offseason?
I was in favor of it because I felt like I wanted to watch him more than I did Mason Rudolph.
Yeah.
And I also think what's interesting is he just, I think when they were in Ireland, he was getting interviewed and they read the quote from Terry Bradshaw talking about him. And it may have been Pat McAfee. I don't quote me on that, but somebody read the quote and Aaron said, I feel like I have a lot of respect for him. He won 4 Super Bowls. He's a great quarterback. I'd like for him to sit down and meet me instead of just listening to the headlines and what other people are perceiving of me. And I listened to his whole Joe Rogan podcast and I saw the headlines that came out of it. He's not as crazy and goofy as people are making him out to be. So in light of that, on the personal side and on the playing side, I knew he was going to be much better quarterback play than we've seen now for 4 or 5 years, right? So I was very in favor of it. And, at that time, still being optimistic. I mean, we got the highest paid defense. We got TJ Watt. I was thinking we could still make some noise, even if it wasn't all the way to the Super Bowl.
Sure. Well, the highest paid defense is not really playing exactly like it, and they haven't for a couple years now, even though they are still very highly paid. what needs to be fixed? Because, I thought Patrick Queen had a better week this last week.
Oh, yeah.
That was, I'm sure, very encouraging to you. Deshaun Elliott got back, and that was good. But what do we have to do? Like, is Terrell Austin, is he just another scapegoat for Tomlin, or is he an actual problem? Because I think I asked you, David, this last week. What do you think about that?
So it's interesting. I had a theory that I had talked to Trey, I call him Trey, David, about. How many years have we been dealing with this communication issue on defense where guys are like, pointing at each other, hands in the air, like communication? I feel as though the communication issue might be Mike Tomlin is in Austin's ear, listening to whatever he's calling, and he either has to approve or disapprove, or he makes a change. I feel like the communication is the delay getting into the defense and then the defense communicating to each other. Maybe that's the case. It's either that or they're just not coached well enough to know what their job is, and that falls on the coaching. Either one of those communication issues is a coaching problem. It's a reflection of poor coaching and preparation.
So you think it might be like two-factor authentication?
I feel like that might be it.
Wow.
Yeah, well, and it's just, it's inexcusable the amount of times, like this entire season and like going years back, that both Peyton Wilson and Patrick Queen mainly, but other players are going like, what? Like, what's going on? Like, what? I thought you had that. And it's like, if you look at the Chiefs, like with Steve Spagnuolo, like they're a fine-tuned machine. That defense is lights out. Everyone knows what they're doing. Like they're an insanely coached group. And I just think that it's inexcusable that we're just letting it happen that long in this miscommunication. And it's like, yeah, I agree that goes on the coaches. It's the players' job to like play and make the play. But if they don't know what the play is, that's not their fault. Like they need to be shown it. And so I think that whatever that is, it needs to be fixed. And I don't know if it's like the two, authentication thing, or if Terrell Austin just is not doing a good job.
I don't know. I truly don't know what it is because, I thought, this last week we could have said, okay, we held them to 6 points and then they didn't. So,
right.
we regressed back to the mean and, here we are back to square one. And I don't know. I just truly don't know because it's the complete opposite of last year. The defense won us games early last year and then it lost us games later. Are we going to see a switch this year? Because I think, I don't know.
Well, and I think that this is the one thing, too, to look at, especially these past two games, is you look at the defense and you're thinking like, oh, well, the players need to make plays. I don't know how many sacks we had last week, but we had a ton of sacks. TJ Watt had a pick. There was a couple other huge plays that our players made. Going back to the week against New England, we had 5 takeaways. So our players are making plays. What is going on in our defense that is letting all these points still happen? It's not our players because they're making plays. Why isn't our coaching finishing the game?
Well, one of the things is you see a guy wide open going for an easy touchdown, an easy, long, big play touchdown. It's almost every game. So we're almost spotting them. So you can fight over every inch, every blade of grass, as they say, and then one miscommunication and they get an easy touchdown. And all of a sudden it's only a 7-point game instead of a 14-point game. It happens that fast. And I think that it's, what are we going to see? It's a good question. Like, I feel like the D-line looks like they're cranking up. The young guys are stepping up. Benton played I've never seen Benton play a game like he did last week. Have you guys ever remember him playing that light on his feet and in the business of the offense a lot of plays?
No, I've always liked him, but I mean, yeah, he hadn't made too many splash plays.
And that's where it all starts up front on both sides of the ball. So with those young guys in there, if we get Highsmith back and we have literally 4 edge rushers that I think are bringing it, with TJ being the lead there, it's the inside linebackers in the back end where and Elliott, I think, makes a bigger difference than we can possibly fathom with him, even if it's leading the communication, but also making plays. Like he's a difference. He's a difference maker.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So yeah, I would agree. I think our secondary is okay. With the injuries, it's unfortunate, but I don't know when Joey Porter Jr. will be back. But I think that, yes, the interior of the line, or the middle linebackers, I think that's the communication. That's what needs to be fixed, which is weird to say because I love Peyton Wilson and I think he's playing great. And I also think that Patrick Queen just had his best game. So again, it's confusion of like, I'm not mad at any of these players. I think they're all They're playing at a high level. So again, I think that signals again that it's coaching, and that something is going wrong on the sidelines because our players are playing. And so I think that defensively and just as a whole, like just the communication mistakes and just the mistakes in general, we just can't kill ourselves. Like we can't shoot ourselves in the foot. If we don't do that, we've proven that we can win.
Well, do you think too that a part of it is, I mean, we say the word complacency a lot. Do you think when we get up big in these types of games that they let their foot off and we see those big splash plays, again, most of the time it takes 7 minutes to go down and score a touchdown. Instead, we turn a 7-minute drive into a 2-minute drive because we give up a 65-yard touchdown or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you think it is complacency to where like they lose focus when they're winning by so much? Because there's teams out there that when they get a lead, they keep getting more of a lead and they don't let off.
And I think this is what it is, because like teams like that, like Bill Belichick, he didn't care. He was scoring every single drive. Like they were going to play their best every single drive, even if they were beating you by 60. It's Kyle Shanahan syndrome, which we've seen in 2 of his Super Bowl, or all 3. I think he had 10-point leads or more. That he's been offensive coordinator or head coach. You start to just play not to lose. And that's the mentality. I think that's the mentality Mike Tomlin has always had when we're up, is just play not to lose. You will lose when you play like that. That is how it works. It's like if you shrink your offense, if you do all these things just to make sure you keep the lead, it's just not how you win games. And so I think that's been our mentality, and that's what would happen this last week. And in any other game that we have a big lead like that, I think it's that mentality that kills us.
And I think that it goes hand in glove with what we mentioned earlier was we're predictable. I think that we have tendencies. When we have a lead, I think that they know we're going to do this, and the answer to that is this play call. I feel like, without having detailed film breakdown, you can't really know that for sure, but I got a gut feeling that that's part of it. It becomes easier for the offense because they know darn well what the defense is going to do based on other times that they've had leads and given them up. This is how they're calling plays.
What was the quote last year? Because it was very unlike Tomlin. He said something along the lines of, we want to elicit victory more convincingly, fluidly. Do you guys remember that?
I think I do. When was that?
It was like, I feel like it was early, like around this time. It might have been Justin Fields' still era, but
you guys are going to have to come up with that, because I've honestly tuned out his wordsmithing communication method and don't listen to him anymore.
Oh, I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous. And I'm sure that that was around that time, because I'm sure he was just, trying to explain why Wilson was in instead of Fields, even though Fields was having a winning record. But yeah, I mean, we obviously haven't seen any fruit of that statement.
No, because every win's a heart attack and every loss is depressing.
They never take it easy on us.
Well, and for a coach who's, probably his most memorable quote ever is "Don't blink." His team, and like what we've been talking about this whole time, his team seems to blink a lot. It's 21-6, and you blink and it's 24-21. So I mean, I don't understand why that's going the way it is.
What a quote. What a quote. Funny. What about the offense? I think DK had his best week last week, and I think it was because the scheme got better.
Yeah.
It's magical what happens when you scheme your best players to do the best thing.
And we talked about that, last week, and I was saying how it's like you see these other guys that scheme their guys open. Like they scheme for their players. They know how their players, what they're best at, and so they make plays for them. And I feel like that happened in this first half. And then he disappeared.
And then he disappeared in the second half. What once again, why are we changing what worked to begin with?
Yeah.
And we early in the game when they were feeding Jefferson, just, hand over fist. I'm like, we've got to do that to DK. You've got to let the offense run through him. He's the playmaker, set up the run with the pass, be strategic and figure some things out. So without a doubt, he's got to have an entire game similar to what the first half was. And every game needs to be like that. I think if that happens, there's a tremendous amount of potential for the offense, because we know we're still seeing we don't really have a number 2 that's standing out. I mean, Austin's making some plays here and there, right?
But, he got hurt. I don't know how hurt he was.
Yeah, I don't know how long he's going to be out either. Maybe this bye week will help him. We haven't really found a go-to tight end or even tight end strategy. It's kind of like, Muth has kind of disappeared, which is another kind of weird situation since he's the highest paid guy.
Much to the grin of David's fantasy team.
I am enraged. He didn't even see the field. It's like you said, like we're paying him. He's our highest paid tight end, one of the highest paid offensive players, and he's getting, I could maybe a handful of snaps.
Yeah.
Is what he got. 0 targets, like 0 anything. It's like, I don't dislike Darnell Washington. I don't dislike Jonnu Smith, but Pat Freiermuth is our best tight end. I don't understand why we're just burying him.
And, on that, so I know there was a lot of talk this past week about when they did go for it and when they didn't, not going for it on 4th down at midfield. I agreed with because they're basically in field goal range at that point. Greg Olson was very critical of Tomlin at that time. I agreed with that call. I didn't agree with the punter kicking it straight out of the back of the end zone instead of trying to angle it out of bounds at the 5 or 10 yard line. That being said, when they went for it down at the goal line, I said to Trey, I said, they've got Metcalf, they've got Mount Washington, they've got Freiermuth. Like, put those 3 out wide and see who's got the shortest guy on them. And Rodgers throws them the ball. Like, I'm not an offensive coordinator, but I feel like that play might work.
Yeah. Well, and it's that simple. And we did that for the 1 2-point conversion. It was just Washington one-on-one, lob it up to him. Like, I think that our offensive play calling needs to get out of its own way because with the players we have, it's not that hard to, put them in place of success. And so I think that offensively, besides the O-line, I'm positive. I think that I'm not worried about, even though the O-line struggled mightily in the pass game, our run game has been effective. Jalen Warren was effective. Kenneth Gainwell was really effective this past week. So I'm not really worried about our run game too much, but I am just still worried about this O-line. I think our O-line coach needs to be fired. Call Mike Munchak, call somebody, because I think that we've got some talented guys on this O-line. And that's the difference from 2021, 22, maybe even 23. We didn't really have anybody, and we had just drafted people. But this year, it's like we've got some people that could play, good ball and probably would be really good on other teams. And so, again, it's the thing with the defense where it's like our players are playing. Our O-line should be good. What's going on the sidelines that they're not?
Yeah, I agree. Well, what else do we got? Is there anything else that we need to talk about as far as the state of the Steelers go?
I think we could. Let's just hit on here. We need to stack up some wins, I think, is what the key to the story is, right?
Your prediction for next.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that. Let's do that.
Because the next handful of games are very winnable games. And, I hate to be one of these guys, but we always have our bye week too early in the season for it to really benefit us, I believe. And they're always stacking us up at the end of the season. Why are we playing the Ravens twice in the last 5 games? Why are we stacked up with, and we got, by the way, the Lions are in there.
The Bills.
The Bills are in there. So,
Packers.
we end on a gauntlet, really.
And that's the whole thing is like, this year is shaping up to be a carbon copy of last year.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do last year again.
No. And Mike Tomlin, again, going back to history and track record, he is known for, it's not always at the end of the year, but just a 3-game stretch of collapsing. No matter who we're playing, just losing 3-4 games in a row that, just almost devastates the season. A lot of the times it does. Sometimes we're able to fight back from it. But, he's known for that. I can count. It's the amount of times he hasn't done that is a significant amount lower than when a 3-game losing streak or more has happened under his reign. So we're very susceptible to that. So yeah, like you said, we got to get wins now. Unfortunately, that's what we did last year and it still didn't help. But I think that, these games are really important that we don't, slip up and just, have mistakes like in Seattle cost us these games that are extremely winnable, like the Browns coming up.
So you got the schedule in front of you, I think. What do we have like for the next three-ish games?
Yeah, so we go Browns at home, Bengals at home, Packers at home. Wait, is that right? No,
I don't think so.
No, they're not all at home.
Bengals away.
Bengals away.
Okay.
The Browns are at home, Bengals away, and
Green Bay's at home. I know that.
And Packers are at home. So, listen, we got to beat the Browns twice this year. We got to beat the Bengals twice this year. That's just how it's got to go.
Yeah.
I think the Packers, they look like they can get got, that should be 3 wins. That should be 3 wins.
It can be and should be.
Well, it can be. And can I see the schedule really
Yeah.
quick? This is something that I want to point out because we were looking at the schedule and we were like, oh man, like, yeah, down the stretch, it's tough. We got the Bills, then the Ravens, then we get a little bit of a break. Who knows with the Dolphins, but then it's Lions, Ravens again. But then I'm starting to look back just based off how this year's gone so far. So the Packers, yeah, they look iffy. They've had some good games. They've had some rough games. But after the Packers, it's the Colts who are out of nowhere. I mean, they're playing everybody tough. They easily could have won last week. They had 2 touchdowns taken off the board. And then the Chargers, who are also no joke, even though they lost this week. So, I mean, those games, specifically the Colts one I'm talking about, that looked like, oh, another thing to, an easier win. They're not easy anymore. It's the Bengals and the Browns games that are the easy ones that we need to win. They're probably upset at me saying easy, but it's true. Their teams are weak.
Yeah, they are. I think interestingly, so I was at the Browns game 2 weeks ago where they beat the Packers.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, their defense is for real. And that scares me because like they bullcrapped their way to a win against Green Bay, they could very easily bullcrap their way to a win against us if we're not on our toes. Now, interestingly, if the Bengals week after that was still featuring Joe Burrow, I would say absolutely that they would lose to the Browns because that's an incredible trap game, and especially with the way that the Browns are fashioned, I could see them losing that game 10 out of 10 times. But now with the Bengals not having Joe Burrow, it's like, okay, let's not get too far-sighted. Sure, that gauntlet is waiting for us, but let's figure out how to win these games that we're at right now. We're 3-1. We have the division. Everybody else in the AFC North lost in week 4. We'll see what happens in week 5. We're recording this before week 5, but at the same time, it's like, we might see another sweep of the AFC North this coming week. Who knows? So this is the opportunity right now. And you can't look too far ahead if you're Mike Tomlin, especially even though we've got this really tough stretch, kind of like last year at the end.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the Browns, I'm worried about their defense too, especially with our offense, but I don't know, being at home, I don't think that Dylan Gabriel, even though I'm not negative on him like a lot of people are, but I don't think he's going to be someone that can fix this Browns offense. I think that their offense is just, I don't even know. It's bad. I mean, you were there. I haven't watched their offense, but they look abysmal.
It was bad. It was very bad. Now, your boy Quinshon Judkins is doing much better.
Yeah.
And he's probably the only bright spot of their offense. But, I mean, their passing game is atrocious. And I don't know, like you said, if Dylan Gabriel can fix that quickly.
Yeah. So I think that this Browns game will be a win. It's at home. I think it'll be low scoring. I think that I think the Browns will get maybe a couple field goals. We'll get a touchdown and some field goals, but I think we'll end up winning.
Okay. What do you got for a prediction?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to beat them. I feel like we're going to win the next 3. I think that if there's just I can't see. I'm having visions of when Ben. Remember his record in Ohio. He was undefeated in Ohio, and frankly beat the Bengals and the Browns most of the time that they played him, whether it was away or at home. I feel like this is the Hall of Fame quarterback that does that to those teams. They're bad teams. They're bad franchises. And I think Aaron Rodgers will make sure that we beat those 2 bad teams.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing, too, to look forward to, when we go to the Bengals the week after that, it's a Thursday night primetime game. So we tend to show up for primetime games, though the primetime games that we've had at Cincinnati have not been good games. Like just going back, there's just always, I feel like something always happens in those games. Like it was the 2020, they had 2 wins and they beat us. The Ryan Shazier thing. All the playoff game. I feel like when we go there and it's a night game, it's just something good doesn't happen. So I'm a little, worried. We'll see what happens. But I think that it'll be interesting to see. Aaron Rodgers is 1-0 against his former division. He beat the Vikings. The Packers game is at home and it's also a night game. We do great at night home games. So, I am also confident that he'll beat his former team.
I think what you're referring to is known as a Tomlin special. The years that the 1 year the Ravens only won 3 games and 2 of them were against us. The years that, the Raiders had 2 wins and 1 of them was against us. Those are the games although it seems like I don't even want to say it. I don't even want to say it. But, that's the Tomlin special. Let's hope we avoid those.
Yeah.
Well, there's really not a whole lot of opportunities to do that the rest of the year, except for this Browns
Maybe
game.
the Dolphins. Maybe the Dolphins.
Maybe the Dolphins.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but I mean, the Dolphins, this is way down the line, but that's also a night game in Pittsburgh. It's going to be freezing. I mean, Tua just can't play in the cold. So,
And now they don't have Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
That was awful.
That
Yeah.
was horrible. That was rough to watch.
All right. Well, that's our State of the Steelers episode with David ×2. Happy to have both of them on for this episode of the Boardman Black and Gold podcast, which is sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. You can call 919-406-4679 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. Any final thoughts that we have for this episode? A very special episode in Boardman, Ohio. Finally getting David's dad on for this episode. Anything else?
Yep, I think I'm good. I think I'm glad we finally got this one together. And you know, I'm pretty hopeful for the rest of the season. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me. You know, listening to you guys and hearing Trey say, my dad this or my dad that. It's been fun being here and giving my own voice to some of the nonsense I'm going to spew out there. So thanks for having me.
Well, you'll undoubtedly be back on eventually, you know, whether that is on some FaceTime or something like that, we will undoubtedly have you back on. And some point down the road, I'm going to get my dad and now David's dad to just talk to each other about their Steelers fandom. And I think that would be a fun episode. You know, we can kind of plan for that to happen at some point down the road. And I think that would be a nice addition to this podcast, which very recently, we hit 1,000 downloads for the course of our time in the last 2 years, actually, because interestingly, our very first year is not counted towards those numbers. So all of those downloads came in the last 14 months or so, which is pretty darn impressive. And, you know, we want to keep growing. So we're very happy with this.
Congratulations,
awesome.
boys. Keep it up.
We're hopeful that it keeps growing too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. And all of our listeners from all the parts of the United States and the world, I saw we did have one download from Ireland. So maybe at some point we can get more of the entire country of Ireland to get bought into Boardman Black and Gold. But for all of our listeners, we appreciate you listening to us each and every week. And, you know, it's fun to be able to do this. It gives us an opportunity to hang out. You know, now we're in Boardman. You know, David's going to Florida now, so probably will be a little bit more few and far between. But it's always been fun on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast. So
yeah, it has, and we're excited for more.
We are excited for more, and we will see you guys next week. After the bye week, we'll have some more conversations about the state of the Steelers going into the Cleveland Browns week. Hopefully we don't have that crap loss, the Mike Tomlin special, according to David's dad. But until then, thanks for listening to Boardman Black and Gold. We will see you next week.